G'day and welcome to the Campfire Project. And today we're having a discussion about Men's Health Week. And I'm here first of all with Alex Holmes, who is a trainee therapist and group facilitator and host of the Time to Talk podcast. How are you, Alex?
I'm doing well. Thanks. It's pretty warm. It's a warm morning here in the UK, which is a huge change. May was wet. Mr. May was wet and windy, so we're trying to acclimatize to the heat now. I think, it's we're back and forth. It's a very up and down country, as you could possibly imagine and know from the news. But yes, it's warm. I'm enjoying myself.
Yeah, well, we've got the cold over here, so we sent it over to you. So I hope you're thankful.
Okay. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome. And then we have Paul Lange, who is a business optimization and growth accelerant. How are you, Paul?
I'm very well, thanks, mate. On the top side in the green, so that's the best place to be, I reckon.
Excellent. And then we also have Steve Angel, who is a counsellor and values coach. How are you, Steve?
I'm good, Alan. I'm good. I'm looking forward to today. Great to see you again, and nice to meet these two fellas. So, Alex and Paul, looking forward to having a chat with you all.
This is going to be interesting because this is the first time that I've met Alex as well, but I've had to listen to the interview that you did with Angela. That was really cool. So it's good to have you here. Now, Paul, I'd like to start with you if I can, because in your business around business optimization and the growth side of things, where does health come into that?
Well, optimization is not just, when I work with premium clients, not just optimizing their business, because optimization works both in personal life and in business life. And there are so many processes that you can optimize. And one of them is indeed your health. Now you can break health down into psychological, mental health, physical health, diet or the foods you consume, exercise. There are so many different areas. And being optimized is not about, I'll tell you what optimized is about, but first of all, it's not specifically about being able to go full tilt, 100%, full throttle all the time. It is about the ability to do that if and when needed, or in the ability, simply the ability to respond, to react, or to take proactive action when conditions arise that you want to be able to go and do something. And so from the health perspective, think of an athlete. An athlete practices and prepares in order to run a race or to play, or to row a boat or to play tennis or whatever the heck they do. If they do not practice and prepare and train and get their body to a point where they can unleash, let's say they're a tennis player, they have to unleash by rocking up to the net and slamming that thing across the net, then they're not going to be able to do it when it matters. So being optimized is not the fact that they're going to go and smash the ball around the court the whole damn time. It's the ability to go and do that. And when I work with people, we have to look at not just the business, we have to look at the people, their mindset, the way they go about their daily lives, their health, their well-being, all that sort of stuff. So there's a great crossover with what Steve and Alex do.
Yeah, because I think that when it comes to sport, it's pretty much the same as being in business, because we've got to be our peak performance when we're working in the business. We'll be able to get to that level and be able to function when we need to.
Absolutely. I'll just add that, this concept that you have a personal life and you have a business life and that they are different things and you are different people in them, that is just rubbish. If we're a polite company, so I'll just be polite. It's rubbish. You cannot separate out who you are in business and from who you are in personal life. If you do, then in one area of your life, you're not being genuine. They are intrinsically connected. And it's when people are in, we talk about people being in flow. When you're in flow, then who you are in business is quite often mapped directly to who you are in personal life. And there is a connection between your passion of something you're passionate about and how you express that in your business life and vice versa. So it's what gets you up every morning. Yeah.
Excellent. So in your work, Steve, how does that sort of blend in with what you do?
Well, as a counselor and sort of a values coach, basically I end up sort of working with, most people will come to me because they're usually at some sort of crossroads in their life, and especially in usually their working life, and finding some sort of identity crisis, or even it could be relationship issues as well. So generally where I see guys and their health is usually from an emotional and mental perspective. And usually it's because they're either stuck somewhere, or they're challenged somewhere, or an event in their life has overcome them to the point that they just don't know how to move forward, because what's got them to where they've got to right now in their life is not going to get them any further. They are stuck. And it's at that point that generally I will see the men that I work with. And predominantly I'm finding this more and more between the age of around 40 to 60, these sort of crisis points in life where who they have been, and generally, unless someone like, and I'm sure someone who works with Paul, who's more focused on what they want to achieve, most guys sort of go through life pretty much on autopilot most of the time, doing things that they're supposed to be doing, what they're expected to do. They'll get a job, they'll have a family, they'll do all of those sort of things, and then at some point in their life, they'll get to this point where they go, crap, that's not even what I want to do. I don't even know what I want. I don't know who I am. I don't even know what I really like. And that's sort of where that emotional and mental well-being comes into play with the work that I do.
Excellent. Yeah. And with you, Alex, with the work that you're doing, how does that, what are you picking up? Because we've got a bit of a situation here. We've got Steve, who's down in Melbourne in lockdown at the moment. You're in England, where you've had similar things. Are you out of lockdown yet, or are you still in a lockdown situation?
So our very, comedic Prime Minister has decided that, like all of a sudden we're going to ease our way out of a lockdown, but yet we have no plan for what that looks like. So people are just wandering the streets, not knowing exactly what they're doing. We're outside, we're inside. We are meant to be outside, but we're not necessarily supposed to be doing much, but all these different things. So yeah, they're trying to open it up by the 21st of June, and then we're consistently being told that might be extended for an extra 2 weeks. So it might look like July now. And then who knows, by the time it gets to July, they might say, okay, well, it'll probably be a month now. And then it's winter, and then we're back again as to what we did. So it's been a very up and down sort of a year. But yes, like we are trying to ease ourselves out of this thing. I think people are just trying to grab every opportunity to connect with one another while they can.
Yeah, so I'm in Newcastle, so where I am, with probably the best situation of all. Paul, you're still in Sydney, aren't you?
Regrettably, I'm still exiled in Sydney. Being a Queenslander, that's punishment.
Yeah, so Sydney's had a couple of little lockdowns, but nothing compared to Melbourne. And here we are in Newcastle. I feel embarrassed when people go, well, how's COVID treating you? And we've had virtually no lockdowns at all up here. It's been a nice, easy run for us. So thinking about that, then the difference you're noticing people in those different areas. What have you actually been noticing? Well, first of all, we start with you, Alex, in England. What's been the impact on mental health? I know, as Steve had just mentioned, the men from the age of 40 up to about 60, well, it's the 40 to the 50-year-olds are the ones who are the most loneliest from all the research that we're hearing. Yeah. Kids have grown up, or they've broken up, they've been made redundant, left their wives or whatever, or their wives have left them. So it's a lonely time. So, and how's COVID sort of affected everything over there in England along with that?
Yeah, I was going to mention something with regards to what Steve said in comparison, because my kind of target audience is from around my age group, so that's mid to late 20s, early 30s, going into 40s, where they edge into Steve's age group with who they work with. And what I'm finding particularly is that there's a lot of young people, because we're being really misdirected, and there's no leadership for us. So we're having to find our own way of navigating all of this. And a lot of us, while growing up and growing through our 20s, we kind of put like a lot of men in my age group put on this veneer of extroversion, of performance, of I've got to be social, I've got to get out and do this, I've got to hit my career at this point, I'm out of uni now, I'm 22, I've got to go ham and go into the law firms, into the banking firms, into journalism, into and I've got to be the best in that career. And what we found by the time we got to the end of our 20s was that was all just far too much for us, and we all burnt out. And then we're in a pandemic, and then we have been kind of made to take this false extroversion and put it aside, because there are some people who are genuinely extroverted, so they do the thing, they do a lot of these Zoom chats, they do a lot of these kind of community building things and want to really connect with friends and consistently communicating in a way. But then the people that were putting on this veneer, a lot of them have found that they are a lot more introverted than they realized. They like their close friends, they like their close communities, they like all of that stuff. So the one worry for me is that with people in our age group is that we were getting so used to not being outside and not having all those expectations of us to be social and connect on a deeper level, whether that be dating, meeting, making new friends, going through like, you know, sexual experiences or friendships, and going through works and interviewing and all of these different things, getting so used to just not having to do that and literally being behind a screen, that stepping outside now, when the Prime Minister has told us that we have the 21st of June, when it's called Freedom Day here, it's ridiculous. And it's we don't know how to act. We are meeting each other in the street. Do we shake hands? Do we do a arm thing? Do we hug? What do we do? So it's kind of building up a lot of anxiety and a lot of confusion about where we are placed and how we are and how we interact, and especially in how a lot of heterosexual men interact with women as well, because now there's this parameter that says that everybody must ask permission before they hug or before they kind of really interact and all this stuff. So what I'm finding is that there's a lot of men who are kind of like, they're struggling with the rules changing in general. And I'm just like, well, the rules are changing, but it is for everybody's safety. And these are the boundaries that should have been in place in the first place anyway, and a lot of these different things. So it's kind of, it's an ongoing conversation. And I think a lot is still yet to be seen, because we really don't know what's happening. But I think that having these men's groups that I'm facilitating and having these continuous conversations with a lot of men, I think we are finding a lot more men in my generation are a lot more open to having those conversations around their mental health, around their well-being. I mean, I had a men's group yesterday, and one of the people in there, he said he was diagnosed with mixed personality disorder, and he's so open about where he's at and kind of what he's doing and what he's going through and a lot of the different stuff, which kind of encourages everybody else to want to be able to step in for as much as they want to share. And when you create those safe spaces and you create these, as you say, these little campfire moments to sit down and actually have the chat without the distraction of having to be so busy or so preoccupied with going places and trying to perform and the like, I think we're going to find a lot more of an integrated man going forward. And I think that it's a travesty, you know, everybody comes to it when they come to it. If you come to it at 40, you come to it at 40. If you come to it at 50, 60, whenever, that's when you come to it. Although, and I don't like thinking things are too late. I always think like these are experiences that you have to go through in life, because that's what life is. You have to go through these things. Some people come to it earlier, and that's probably what they're called to do. So yeah, I'm in that space of navigating all of that myself. So I always sit at the feet of elders and get wisdom and learn and that. So, you know, I'm just going by what I'm kind of intuiting.
Excellent. You know, as far as the age goes, and that you're never too old.
Yeah, life is a process of experiences. It's that simple, right?
I look at myself, I'm a very old soul, as people would say. But I have this vision for myself when I get older, just to be this sprightly, grey-haired man that's just learning everything, and I don't care. Like, I feel like, you know, if you know everything by the time you get to a certain age, I don't even think you.
No, dude, you're gonna be like Steve and I. You're just gonna go totally, you know.
might do. I have to call you up.
and you do it before you have to. You make a choice and you just do it.
You know what? And I now understand most of my uncles and the men in my family. I grew up with them all being bald.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I've seen pictures of them in the 90s where they all had high tops and hair and this, that, and all these things. And I was just like, what happened? And they were just like, well, we'll see. And I'm seeing slowly.
Let me tell you, you know, from the perspective of being a man, whatever a man is, chicks dig it. Right?
They love a bald-headed man.
They do, for many, many different reasons. But yeah, I'm reminded of a song. Alex may not remember him. I'm not going to play the age card, but 1982, Joe Jackson released a song, "Real Men," and it was a bit controversial at the time. You know, as with everything, people go and give meaning to whatever they, you know, in whatever way they're going to. And some said, "Oh, it's so outrageous," and others like it's so pro-gay and whatever. But it really, that whole thing that Joe Jackson started with that song back in the 80s, because that really framed the 80s for many people. That whole discussion has been going for 40 years still, and it's still going on, because you hear it in what Alex was saying. You know what? Not literally, but in context. And I was just making notes as we were going, right? The thing I find about this whole COVID thing, it's had such an impact on people, obviously, but on men, especially in the context. And then again, thinking, what is a man? What is a real man? And it's got nothing to do with you got a penis or otherwise, genetically, obviously. But, you know, mental health has declined for a number of reasons. One, you know, a couple of factors would be the fact that guys get sacked, and it's like, oh my God, I just got sacked. I wasn't good enough to be kept on. They got kept on. I was the one let go. Now I can't fend for my family. Now I can't provide. What am I going to do? I'm not good enough, right? Major impact. And another thing that occurred to me that COVID has exacerbated is a study I came across recently. It was a study that was done over 20 years, an American thing, but I guarantee you it applies to Australia, UK, every first world and many third world countries as well. It was done over 20 years, ended in 2019, I think. And it said that the average American spends 93% of their lives indoors. Now that can be in home, in the office, in a car, in public transport, in a plane, train, automobile, whatever, indoors, not out in the sun and fresh air. So 7% of their life is spent outside. That equates to, I did the maths, it equates to just under 1 hour and 41 minutes a day. And then I got myself thinking, am I outside 1 hour and 41 minutes a day or more? And the answer is quite often no. But we're not meant to be inside that long. So for the longest time leading up to COVID, we've already been self-imposing the situation where we are not giving ourselves an ideal ideal circumstances to have our best mental health. And now COVID comes along, and pretty much every government is reading from the same playbook, and you know, wham, you're down to, well, they're allowing an hour a day in Melbourne at one stage. You know, I don't know if everyone went out and did that or not, but it's crazy.
Yeah, because that's going to affect, as you said, just not just getting out into the outside, but it's also the vitamins and everything else you get from being outside. So all those things that you're missing from that level, that's going to have an impact. And
the physical touch, like Alex was saying. So Alex, my friend, my advice to any man, woman, child, or otherwise going out, you know, outside and meeting people, yes, you go and hug, yes, you go and shake hands, and you do not do this air arm thing. That's just buying into it.
You know what? It was so funny. I went roller skating yesterday, and as I was leaving with my friends, we were just like, "Oh, we hugging," so we hugged and whatnot. And then there was a guy that walked past us in his mask, and he was like, "Share the love, man. Share the love." And I felt like this is some real weird hippie stuff that's happening right now. And I'm like, "Yeah, I gotta share the love." It was so funny. It was just like those little moments I live for when I step outside. You know?
Sorry, but I was going to say, otherwise we're going to be as batshit crazy as Kamala Harris and her husband kissing in public with a face mask on, for God's sake.
No,
Yeah.
no, I can share an experience that I had recently. I was involved in putting on an event here in Victoria, which, you know, that's a rarity in the last 12, 15 months. And so this event was in the middle of a couple of lockdowns. And obviously we had to follow a COVID safe plan in order to make it happen. And so there was a lot of sort of learnings for me and on what that would mean and how that would actually have to play out. And that even went from everything to making sure that microphones were being cleaned when they were handed from one person to another. And just, it's kind of just bizarre, but, you know, all understandable in order for it to go ahead. So after putting this together, working on it for hours, working with all the suppliers and the contractors and everything, 70 people were being put together in a room for the very first time. They hadn't seen each other for 12 months, this group of sort of, you know, entrepreneurs. And I swear to God, that COVID safe plan just went straight out the window the moment they all walked in. They all just started shaking hands, kissing, hugging, and it just didn't matter what anyone was saying to anyone. It was just, no, this is what we want to do. The natural desire to connect, to touch. There were still some people who were cautious, and they took whatever precautions were necessary for them. But the majority, the need to be together, just overrode. It's just their natural desire to do it, and it was kind of. I was quite happy to see that. I was happy to see that. I was happy that we weren't keeping them apart after we brought them all together. So yeah, I think what you'll find, Alex, is that, you know, yeah, that's just that natural desire to connect from one person to another will override any rule.
With that desire and that as you say, that we're shown there, is that been strengthened, do you think, with the lockdowns and everything else? Because would they have hugged as much or as quick a hug?
Are they being strengthened? I think, look, I think I've seen experiences of both. I know for myself, I feel it's more strengthened. I think they're more purposeful. They feel more meaningful for me when I have those connections, and, you know, whether it be a hug or you know, just a strong handshake with somebody. And I know for the many people that are around me as well, it's significant. But I feel that there's still there's a strong part of there's a large majority that still are very uncomfortable with it. I think, and this is where we're going to have this constant divide, and this is where the rules are coming in, and where some people are going to follow them stringently, and then there's going to be others who are not. And I think what I'm finding from the people that I speak to and work with, those people who are really following the rules, there's more to it than just following the rules. It also plays into a lot of fears that they have genuinely. And I think that those fears play into things that, you know, that they are maybe more fearful as people in life. They see more, they have more negative mindset in life. So all of those things come to play. And I think this just fosters that behavior a little bit more than, say, those people who maybe understand, you know, if you're a healthy person and you do look after yourself physically, mentally, you know, you're doing all the right things, you know, your vitamins, you know, you're at best, you know, the best of health you can be, that the chances of you getting sick from COVID are very, very low. And even if you do get COVID, you will recover fairly quickly. So I think most people understand this. Those who I think who are very fearful of it are generally because it's part of their nature to be as well.
As you say, when you got that fear, then the thoughts that you're having, the chemicals you're creating that are going through your body and affecting all the organs and all the other things that are going on, you're not going to be at your optimal health. So you're actually putting yourself in a worse position. If you do get the COVID, you won't recover as quickly. And so, you know, this is the thing, you know, talking about mental health is one thing, but coming up with some solutions or understandings of things that we should be doing. Because how many times do we hear people just sitting and talking about, you know, what's wrong? But how often we talk about what what can we do to make things differently? Because it is a natural thing for a lot of people just to be born worriers. How can they start recognizing that, hey, well, yes, when I'm thinking that way, it's not doing my health any good, but I feel that I can't get out of that rut. Are there methods or ways in which they can start to address those things to make it easier on themselves, to put some of their fears aside?
I'll let you guys go at it first, but I've got an opinion. I'll unleash later.
I think what we're seeing now a lot of the time, okay, so one of my friends, he works for Amazon, well, he works for a publisher, and he kind of does a lot of analytics looking at Amazon and what people are buying, and kind of the books that people are buying. And a lot of people are buying books around spirituality and about tapping into self and healing and figuring out what all of that looks like, which says to me that people are going inward and they're becoming a lot more concerned with their inner lives, because they have to, because they're at home and they have to figure out how many plants they want to have in their house. They have to look at the environment and figure out, oh, this could do with a bit of a sprucing up. So they paint everything and redo all this stuff because they've got time to do that. What I do when I speak to the guys I work with is I tend to encourage them to get back into the body. So that is doing a lot of embodied practices around meditation, yoga, just the gentle stuff. And yoga's not really that gentle; it's quite hard. People think it's a very soft exercise, but it's quite difficult. But get back into those things so that you are aware of where your body is storing a lot of the stress that it's holding from all of this stuff. And obviously, meditation is the mindfulness piece of that, getting the mind right. And also getting back to the gym, fitness, or even if it was shut down for quite a bit here, but getting outside, forming those kind of fitness groups where you can do those things remotely, tapping into those things, because it's keeping yourself active and getting that and those endorphins going within you kind of does help. But on the more spiritual side, I always said to people, get a journal and really kind of express all the stuff that is going on with you. Like, because as a writer myself, I've always found that writing is about clarity of thought. And it's, you know, when you're journaling, you can just jot down anything and just kind of make it and just get it out of your head. And then when you do go back and review it, you can actually clarify the thoughts that you're doing. Because when you'll find is that as you write, your mind is becoming, you're trying to understand the words you were using to describe what you're going through. And I think it just becomes an even more of a mindful practice as well. So those are some of the things that I always suggest for people to do to kind of really get connected and get grounded and start asking yourself the questions that you've been ignoring because of that, as I mentioned earlier, that mask of extroversion, that doing thing. And, you know, other than the small moments that you have on the tube back home, on the train back home, or on your drive where you have to be with yourself. So yeah, I think it's taking those concerted times and moments to tap in to who you are. Similar to what Steve was saying about you know, to get to a certain age and you don't even know who you are anymore, and you're just like, who am I? I think start the interrogation. And the final thing I say is that I think it was Socrates. Did he say this? So, like, an unexamined life is not a life worth living. So examine your life.
Yeah, as I can see with the, as you said, meditation, you know, can be a bit of a step for some people and that to get to, because they've got to slow down from being quite erratic in their own thoughts racing. But when you're writing as well, that slows you down because you can't write as fast as you're thinking. So it helps to clarify things and level things down a little bit. How about you, Steve?
Well, I want to say a couple of things about just the mental health. First of all, there is so much talk about mental health, which I think is excellent. However, I have a couple of concerns about the talk around mental health. I think it's unregulated for most part. I think it's a lot of information going around, and it worries me sometimes. Also, self-diagnosis also worries me. But the idea that mental health is just about the mental mind. And if you look at, say, something like a condition like depression, for instance, or anxiety, take depression, for instance, there are so many factors that come into play with depression. One is your physical being, you know, and like we're talking about, not being outside, not getting those endorphins, not moving the body, you're not being outside in the sun in order getting our vitamin D. All of this kind of helps with our body. And then there's also the emotional state of somebody as well. You know, those feelings that are coming up are generally going to be suppressed in some way because they're uncomfortable and they could be new to people and they don't know what to do with them. Generally, we'll try to push those things down. And so we're not looking even at how do we even name the feelings that we have. We're trying to just work on just you know, I feel shit, I feel shit, I feel shit, I can't get out of bed, you know, all those things come into play. There's also the environment that you're in for a lot of people too, you know. So if we go back a step and talk about what's happened to COVID, right, in COVID, is that we found ourselves in an environment that perhaps has not been the best environment for us to be in, locked in for like 24/7. You know, if we had a job and we were going out, you know, as Paul was saying, you know, we're outside most of the time in another job or another office, wife, partner with somewhere else, kids with somewhere else. All of a sudden we found ourselves in an environment that maybe is not really set up for you know, our well-being, but we've been so distracted in our life doing things that COVID kind of put the handbrake on everything, and we found ourselves going, crap, this is it. And I'm in here and I have really never examined it because I've been so busy doing things. I don't really know what I really like and don't like anymore. So that, I think, has been an aspect of what's happened with COVID and what we found ourselves in. That's caused us to have a lack of control over our life, because whilst we may not have had a lot of control, we were in the process of moving and going forward in some direction, whether it's the right direction or not the right direction. We're moving, but then we've stopped. And that caused us to feel very disconnected, and a lot of discomfort came from that. And so we didn't know what to do with it. And when we feel like we've lost control, I can't do the things I used to do. So what are the things that I do want to do? Oh my God, I don't really know. I've never really spent that much time thinking about the things I really want to do. So mental health for me is something we've got to look at from so many different elements, and it is physical, it's emotional, it's the environment that we're in, the foods that we eat. So all of those things come into play. So I think it's important that, you know, that if I was to give someone advice, is I would look at all of those areas in their life and see, and just give them one or two things to just do differently in that space that they're not doing now. And I'm going to go back to depression for 1 second. And that is, the most important thing with depression is, because depression is kind of a form of timeout, right? There's a belief underneath it that's saying, I can't cope with what's going on. I don't have what it takes to get through this. So I want time out. And that's okay. I think everyone needs time out. But you have to time that time out. You have to time it out. And a good way to do that is to give a routine to somebody. You know, and it's as simple as, okay, you're going to get up at 7 o'clock. You're going to have your shower. You're going to go get some breakfast. And then you're going to go for a walk. Then you're going to come back. And then you make sure you go to bed at this time. And it's a simple thing like that, that when someone's out of control and doesn't know how to bring everything back, you just bring it back to the basics and just give them a real sort of simple step looking at those areas. That's what I found works really well for people if you're going to give them some advice.
Good stuff. Paul, you were going to say before?
Yeah, I was, you know, and I'm just going to tag on to what Alex and Steve were saying. Life is really busy, but we've made life busy. We've created that ourselves in many different ways and many different levels, you know, and we see the expression of that every day on our mobile phones and computers. When someone sends us a message, they usually don't. I mean, how often is it that someone picks up the phone and calls someone? They don't. They get their damn phone, they send a quick message, and the response most of the time is a thumbs up, heart, laugh, whatever. Life has become so fast that we do not even have the time to write a complete sentence back, let alone maybe even a couple of words. We just send a goddamn emoji, right? Because life is so fast and we don't have the time to invest in people. It makes me furious, you know, because what happens is this: you send a message and you get caught in this back and forth message. You would have had the conversation 5 times faster if you pick up the frickin' phone and call them. Right? And you can't say, oh yeah, but Alex is in the UK, I can't do that. Yes, you can. Free VoIP calls, not a problem. Time zones allowing, right?
Yeah.
It's nuts.
You got a number of apps to do it.
Absolutely, right? And so yes, mental health is indeed about all those things. It's about environments, about food, and there are so many ways you can Google. I'm going to cut through all of it with the advice I give my clients. It is a simple thing. It is simple when you know how to do it. Getting to the point where you can do it is perhaps it's not so simple. But just on the food side, you know, go and find out which foods are going to raise your serotonin levels. You know, I personally find that simple carbs and refined sugars really get me depressed. So if I have a piece of normal chocolate, for example, chocolate's supposed to be really good for your mood, it's going to do damage to me. But if I have a piece of 95%, cocoa solid chocolate, most people think it tastes like bloody bitumen. I love it, right? But I don't get, I get actually really good feeling out of it. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that you can eat, which will improve your mental well-being and the way you feel about stuff. And yeah, get out. If you're not achieving that 1 hour and 41 a day, or even if you are, make sure 1 hour of it is fitness in some way, whether it's walking around the block or the park, on your bike or whatever. Just go and do something physical with that time and ideally extend it. But so the shortcut I give people is this, and it goes for the most simple conditions all the way up to depression. And I know the therapists and all the rest of it are going to say, oh, but your clinical depression is so much different. Okay, whatever. Let's have that discussion another time. But it's really simple. Life is a process of experiences. And there are two things in those experiences. There is what happens and the meaning, the story we tell ourselves, the meaning we give to it. Worry, concern, fear, yada, 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 happiness, joy, love, hate, all that stuff, all these emotions are simply the meaning we're giving to any specific experience that we are having, something that's happened. And that experience, of course, is based on a whole bunch of stuff, our paradigms and what's happening in the moment, the context, all the rest of it, and that'll filter us back. So the simple practice is this, and as I said, it's actually simple in description, and it's really simple to do when you can master it. It's just a challenge to get to that level of mastery, and that is to separate out the meaning from the what happened, the story from the what happened. And then you realize that you can look at the story and say, yeah, actually, that's just one of those Chinese whispers I keep telling myself, because I tell you what, there's, something happens, you tell yourself, oh, that was really crap. And every time you tell that story again, over and over again, whether it's to someone else or to yourself, it becomes a new iteration of the story, and it just grows and grows and grows. And if it's a bad story, it grows in and escalates in badness. And if it's a good story, well, we know those ones grow and they become these, bigger than Ben-Hur things that we did. Hey, I went down and built a sandcastle at the beach with my son, and all of a sudden I built this grandiose sort of Taj Mahal, right? Because that's how things go. But it's the story we tell ourselves which sets us up for all of those things, and the emotions that we have, they become amplified, whether they're good or they're bad. So as I said, it's a simple thing to do. Yeah, it is a very existentialist or ontological approach to life. And having said that, when you can master it, it's and I fall back into the trap myself often enough of not separating the two out. And it's when I do that I can oh fuck, didn't again. Okay, go back and say, oh, I have to own my shit. I that's not what happened. What happened was this, and go on. And I guarantee you, I know people who've mastered depression, who've got out of depression without the drugs, who have followed this approach. It's not just me coming up with some bloody thing. This has been, there's good science, not pseudoscience like we've got with a lot of the stuff happening today. There's some good science behind it.
Excellent.
And then there was silence.
No, just looking at Steve, then I can see Steve's. The cogs are moving inside, and I was just wondering what they were.
They were, yes. I've got one of those faces. You can always tell what I'm thinking, which is really not a great thing. I'm terrible at cards or poker.
I'm with you. I can't do it.
Yeah, no. Look, I understand what you're saying, Paul, and it's true, because they are the stories that we tell ourselves. But I think for a lot of people, though, it's impossible to do this on your own. I think that's the message that I think that we need to tell people is it's actually impossible to do this on your own. When you're stuck in that feedback loop by yourself, and you tell that story to yourself, and then you find evidence around you to support that story, and you find people around you to support that story, it's so difficult. It's so difficult to do that. And it often takes quite a lot of courage in order to sort of break that and go, okay, I don't want this anymore, and find someone to help you. But I believe that you need someone. And I'm not saying that you need to go to a therapist. I'm not saying you go into a counselor, but you need somebody else that you can trust enough that knows how to listen without trying to fix you, and just gives you the opportunity to say what you're saying and then to challenge it. Just challenge it. Why do you say that? Why do you believe that? What evidence do you have that says that your life's like this? You know, you need that person in your life. And for some people, it is a therapist, or it is going to be a coach, or it's going to be someone like that. But that's where I feel like you can't do this on your own. You can't get out of a rut by yourself. You just can't.
Yeah, definitely, and definitely not in the beginning.
No.
And as you go through it, until you get to a level of mastery where you can. But even then, you need. I think a good word to describe what you're talking about is you need a catalyst, someone who's going to take what you're seeing and hold a mirror up to yourself and let you see it for what it really is. You know, because you spoke about the evidence, and you're right. We actually give ourselves the evidence of whatever it is we think and believe. And basically, a belief is nothing more than a consistently reoccurring thought. Right? So again, it's nothing more than a consistently reoccurring thought. And when we have that consistently reoccurring thought, we give ourselves the evidence of it, whether it's good or bad.
That's right.
Oh, I'm a shit that, I'm a shit this, I'm a shit that. And so you become shit. And you give yourself the evidence of being shit. And you get, the deeper you go, you know, you get pile more and more shit on. So yeah. And yes, you definitely need someone to come along with a shovel and
you're on the head.
That usually works. I'm all for that.
If we don't want to dig, we'll knock you out.
Yes.
So I think that fits in sort of each country at the moment with Men's Health Week have got a different theme. And in Australia, it's about the connection with community, culture, mates, family, and men's groups. Now, all of those have in common is not doing things on your own. I think that's so important to realize that, you know, we get out of our ego. We think that, oh, we're supposed to be able to do everything. Men were really great students. We were told all this rubbish when we were younger. We became the best students, and then we believe it when we get older. And now we feel that, okay, I've got to fix these problems. I'm the man and all the rest of it. And everybody else is feeling the same way, but nobody's getting anywhere because they're all trying to do it on their own. The ego gets in the way, you know, because if I do show my vulnerability, I'll show a weakness. No, show your vulnerability, you show your strength. But you actually have the courage to step forward and say, hey, can somebody help me here?
Yeah, no, my wife's better at fixing shit than I am. I'm not an RTFM kind of person. She fixes everything. It's great.
I said this the other day to somebody we were talking. I'm happy to be a kept man. I'm very happy to be a kept man. Like, I will do all the things that I need to do because I just don't want to have to, you know, like, I think that, as I said, you know, over time, I think we're kind of recognizing what our strengths are becoming. And what our actual natures are. I think because for some people it's just not that. Some people do have to be kind of like, you know, providing and all these things. But I do think that we are learning to move into more collaborative understandings of how we navigate the world and what these roles mean to us and what they mean to us as species who relate to one another. You know, and I think it's just acknowledging and understanding and accepting all of that. Where we're struggling and suffering is that resistance to change, and that is the masculine, the toxic masculine, as they would say. Is just that we don't want anything to change because everything's fine, everything's robust, and when things change, buildings fall, and you know, everything just crumbles, and then you get into a tantrum, and it's like, I don't want to. It's just like, come on, like, you know, if we're going to be integrated men, we need to really, really tap into what that means and why we feel that way.
Well, that's interesting you say that, and because it's true. I mean, as human beings, we do not like change. Although we like the idea of change, it's always change in the positive, and it's always something, you know, I've always sort of felt that, you know, we're very good at changing things in our life, but very reluctant to change ourselves in our life. Like, you know, we'll change our car, or I don't know, we'll change the cushions on the couch, or repaint, and that's good. That's good change. That's easy change. But change, where it's fundamental level, we don't like it because we lose that sense of control again. and I lost my train of thought and what I was going to say to you just then. I hate when that happens. Yes, I'll come back to me on that actually.
I was going to add on, maybe this will help, but the thing people need to realize is life is change. And I don't mean that as some cliched, whatever slogan, but if you think about it, the human body, plants, anything living, even things which we don't perceive as having motion and not living, like rocks, everything is constantly changing. And they're quite often sort of microscopic changes, right? Every cell of your body is changing every microsecond of every day. And the rocks outside in your garden are being slowly weathered away by the wind or the rain or the whatever there is, or the sun is having an impact. Everything is changing. Life has changed. Why do we, as Homo sapiens, resist change? It's not natural. It is
because
our
we generally
natural
have a
form.
fear, don't we? Sorry, Paul. We generally have a greater fear that change is going to be bad. That's the fear that we have.
Yeah.
We don't see change as ever really being good for us. That, you know, it's just kind of, I will become, I don't know, just this fuller expression of myself. Like the things that I could achieve, or the I don't know, even my capacity to love could even be bigger, or whatever it is. We never see it. We very rarely see change as something that is going to be better for us. And that was something, and now I remember what I wanted to say in relation to what Alex is talking about. Thank you for that, Paul. It's challenge. One of the things I think if guys could do this more is if they could just be more honest with themselves. I think self-honesty is an underutilized value in life. If you can just be more honest and be able to express what you're thinking and feeling, right? And that takes a lot of courage, right? Because I don't really like to sort of see who we are. But if we could see who we are, I think that we would overcome a lot of bullshit that's happening in our life, especially in our relationships. And I think with our relationships with our intimate partners, as well as with our friends, and even with our colleagues at work, because there is a real, not only do you disarm other people when you are honest, right? But anything that's getting in the way of this relationship or what you need in life or what you want kind of just falls away. If I just say, look, I say to Paul, mate, I had a really shit day today. I have a really shit day. I was coping really well yesterday. Today, I'm not really coping very well. I don't know what it is. I'm not doing well. I just looked at the books for the accounts for the business and they're not doing well. I'm not, everyone thinks I'm doing well and I'm not really, I don't know how I'm going to get through this, but, I just wanted to share that with you, and whatever you can do to help me, or, just, this is just honesty where I don't have to pretend that something isn't what it is. It's that, like, you're saying the bravado and all of that, this persona we keep trying to hold on to. It's exhausting work. It's exhausting.
Yeah, we think that social media is reality. We think what we're seeing out there is reality. Absolutely right. And maybe reconnecting. The message for this Men's Health Week is indeed, like you're saying, connect, go out and connect with people, reconnect with people, and change. Because you mentioned before, Steve, about how a lot of people have, through this whole COVID thing, they've discovered that they aren't really doing what they want to do, and they've had because they've had time to sit there and think, well, what does I want to do? Right? I want to do that. And so many people have had like a sort of sea change or whatever in their life because they've realized that. So maybe the message is that people go out and embrace change take this opportunity to embrace change and see it as that positive thing that it actually is. And if you can see it as positive and remove, and you'll immediately remove the fear, because let's be honest, fear and faith cannot live in the same space. It's like light and dark. You cannot have the both of them in the same space in your mind about the same thing at the same time. So maybe that's part of the bigger message for this week for people.
That's good. One thing that I've always, we've talked about the fact that we need to step up. We need to go and talk to other people, ask for help. So we recognize we need to do that. how do people do it? What's the way? Because this is the thing that always goes through my mind all the time, is that if somebody's really, their life is not the way they want it to be, it's horrible and everything else, and they go, I've got to get changed, but I don't know how to, I need help, but I don't know how to ask for help.
Mm-hmm.
Steve already said it.
Yeah.
Steve already said it. Basically, you have to be honest.
But if you can't be, right, if you
Mm.
can't be, yeah, you know, you do need to be a bit more vulnerable. Let's just take, for instance, someone who doesn't want to do it. Then I think it's one of the things that this Men's Health Week is also talking about is connecting with your mates. And I think it's incumbent upon other men to actually check in with mates and actually ask more honest questions. Like, not just, hey, how you doing? Because the response to that's going to be, oh yeah, I'm pretty good, mate. You know, and there are ways of doing that. You know, our mate Phil Robson from Saving Brothers, you know, that he has something that he will often say is, you know, how are you doing out of 10? Give me a score out of 10, mate. How's your day going out of 10? Which is a very clever little way of just forcing an answer, which might be, you know, I'm a 6. Well, what's causing it to be a 6? And I know these are very simple questions, but they elicit a conversation that will probably be more helpful and more honest with one another than just kind of brushing over and just going, okay, unless you tell me something, then we're just going to pretend and there's nothing wrong. Although I haven't seen you for the last 3 months, you haven't answered any of my phone calls, you're not looking very good. You know, I know that your partner left. You know, all of these things, that these subtle little signals we see, but we tend as guys to sort of ignore it unless the guy literally is coming to you and he's on his knees and going, mate, I'm just like just far away. You know, this, I think, is one message, is that you do need to check in with one another.
I think that's a good idea, because if we're saying to people you need to ask for help and everything else, and they don't know how to help do it, they're worried about what other people are going to think, there's the fear and all of that. If we're talking about community connection and all the rest of it, then let's reverse it the other way. As you've been talking about, you know, us saying to our mates, asking them how they are. You know, as I said before, are you okay day should be every day of the year, not just one day a year.
Absolutely. And
asking that question. But I like the way that, as you pointed out, that Phil's given that number, because it's not just a phrase then, because everyone's used to saying fine. And what's that? Freaked out, insecure, neurotic and emotional. You know, which is what most people are when they say fine. So it's it's a matter of them being able to look and go, well, ask them the question instead, because if we have that community, want to be connected, let us create the community that we want to have around us. Absolutely. By asking the people around us.
And I'll give you a good crossover between personal and business right now, based on what Steve just said, because that question is a great technique. You know, hey, give us a number out of 10. Well, I'm a 6. Oh shit. Okay. So yeah, first, what are the circumstances that make it a 6? Okay. Yeah. Right. So now tell me, and this works in business as well as in personal, right? Firstly, the personal side. Okay. So tell me, what do we need? What do you need to do? And how can I help? Well, how can I support you? But what do you need to do to make it a 10? And in business, you ask whether it's a customer service process, an employee process, a vendor process, or whatever process. You say, okay, well, how do we do out of 10? Well, you did a 6. Shit. Okay. What do we need to do to make it a 10? It's the same. It's the same question. It's the same process, but it works so well across both sides of it. And it's brilliant to use that in the personal side. I love that.
As you've just brought back as well, by just giving that description, virtually everything we do in business also is the same that in personal life and everything else. We're emotional beings. We take those emotions wherever we go. We can't cut them off and turn them off. And it's a combination of everything. Like Steve was saying about all those different areas, the food, the thoughts and everything else, looking at all of those, not just one thing on its own. So we are we're complicated, but we don't have to be complex. Because complicated, you can pull apart and put it back together again, but complex, usually a little bit more messy.
Yeah, we're comprehensive.
We love the messy though. We have to be.
Are that too many comps?
Oh, this has been brilliant, guys. I really appreciate you coming in and chatting with us about this, because I think we need more conversations like this, and the message we need to be putting out is not, we're saying to men, and we hear the women saying to men, you've got to step up and speak up. Well, maybe we need to ask people those questions so that they can step up and feel safe to do so. Making it a lot easier for everyone.
I always
Start
say
changing the belief. Start changing the belief systems that we've all been ingrained with, you know,
Yeah.
or the paradigms that we've had. You know, we talked about change, and I guess the thing is, we have to change those belief systems. They're not working for anyone. You know, we're all kidding ourselves that they work. They don't work. So let's make what do we want now? What do we want is our belief system, and these conversations just need to be more honest and open, and you know, and real.
Yeah. And,
Yeah,
and part of the
sure.
problem is the programming you've got since a child. You've
Yeah.
got,
For sure.
you know, it's like you got to clear out that plant bed of crap that's been piled on you. You know, I look at life as I said, like a plant bed or a flower bed or whatever. You know, in the beginning, it's just an empty space, and then you put some nice dirt in there, and you start to put some seeds, and then these things grow. But what happens over time is people start to throw the food scraps in. Well, some food scraps are okay, but it's when you start throwing the fish heads and the bones in, and the rat that the cat dragged in, right? Then it starts to rot, and the quality of the soil gets crap, and the produce it grows becomes less good. So what you have to do is you have to clear that out, and it's very hard for people. Again, it comes back to you need help to do that. You need to clear out that crap of all the programming you've had since a child. And a lot of people aren't prepared to do that. They are not prepared to accept that their parents unwittingly and unwillingly imposed all this shit upon them. You know, their parents, I'm sure, did the best they could, as we do as parents, right? As I do as a parent, right? You know, we do the best for our children. And our parents did the best for their kids that they could at the time, given everything they had. Nonetheless, we all pile crap upon the next generation, but both as parents and as society and all the rest of it. And you've got to clear that crap out if you're going to make progress in any huge way.
As we're saying, this whole thing is about figuring out the human aspect, the real human aspect. When I think there's that big thing with kids and parents. Obviously, I'm not a parent, but I'm coming from the perspective of clearly being son. I'm just like, you have to, there's a point, and I think most people, there's a point where the hero of the parent becomes just the curtain comes down or drawn apart or whatever, or torn down in whichever way it happens, and you realize that they're human, and then the process of forgiveness comes from all of that. You've lied to me all this time. You were meant to be that person who to do that, could never be scared, could never be upset, always had an answer, and then you grow up and you see their vulnerabilities. And I think that at some parents, it's a time, and I would like to think that if or when I become a parent, I would love to be able to show those vulnerabilities early, acknowledge when I'm wrong, acknowledge when I'm at fault, figure out as I go with these parents that with these kids, that nothing's going to be perfect. And I've seen that with my nieces and nephews, and just really trying to do that. They should not be scared of me. Yes, yes, you should have a particular level of respect because you are an adult in a position, but they should not be frightened of me or afraid for me to say sorry, or you know what I mean. It's just all of these different things, all of this kind of paternal stuff that kind of just gets messy in the way. And I think that the human aspect in all ways kind of needs to come back to it. We are not machines, we are not operating on autopilot. We need to just kind of be present and get involved in the human stuff. That's where the excitement is.
Look, it comes down to authority. You're absolutely right, by the way, Bill. That's from my experience anyway. But it comes down to authority that is imposed is not authority. Authority that is given is real authority. And so, and we see it as people, there are parents who do it and there are governments who do it, right? And we see that it's very clear to see in government, right? Like imposed authority, totalitarian government, whatever, versus people who actually get the real vote from the people and get the mandate from the people. As parents, though, there are a lot of people who still have this attitude of, I'm the parent, everything I say goes, and there's just no question asked. And I'm not saying that we need to dilute that down. Just be genuine, and part of being genuine is actually admitting when you're wrong. And when you do that, I've seen this myself from my own experience. When you admit you're wrong, and it's not, Not all that often I'm wrong, by the way.
That's a key part as well.
Did I talk about self-honesty before?
Because I'm always right. But I know that I can say when I'm wrong.
I'll attack you in a second. But yeah, you know, when you are on those very rare occasions as a parent wrong, you know, you get a lot of street cred with your offspring when you can own it. You know, to go and wax lyrical about it. It's just, hey, shit, this is what happened. Shouldn't have done it. I'm sorry. Let's move on. You know, and I find that works really well.
So in the case of where you've got the adult who, yeah, in the case of where you've had the adult who has said, I'm the parent, you know, and this is the way it is, they would have been told the same thing by their parents as well. So they're just repeating the behavior. As Alex has been talking about, giving, you know, talking to the kids, explain to when you've made mistakes and everything else, owning up to it, being honest and everything else. For people, parents who talk about, well, I love my children. Well, in doing that, you're giving your children a gift. You're showing them they don't have to be perfect. And you're taking the pressure off them so they have an easier life growing up and they don't put pressure on themselves. And they're not likely to put themselves in the same spirals that we've put ourselves in the past.
Absolutely. And don't get me wrong, by the way, there are moments, and I know you guys have seen this, and Alex, you're going to see this as well. There are moments when you say, guess what? This is how it's going to be done because I said this is how it's going to be bloody done. I don't have time to explain. I'll explain it to you another time. Just do it.
Right. And that just has to be what it is.
Look, you can't listen. A ship can't have two captains, right? It's real simple. And when there are those moments when something just needs to be done, right? Someone needs to take a decision. There's a president of the bloody country or whatever. Someone needs to make a decision, make a choice.
As long as you come back to the child and you explain to them, as you said, you need to do it now, but I'm going to come back to you and tell you why. It's in the values that I work with clients, one of them is equality. And where they really get surprised is when I suggest to them that they need to have that level of value and for equality with their children. And it's not that there's no child-adult relationship, but you need to see everyone with equal worth, right? And it's when we use authority for power and dominance. That's where these problems come in, and that authoritative, you know, behavior comes in. We see that in our governments, and you know, and all of that. But yeah, it's like the idea that we see everyone with equal worth, and that is just really speaking to the child with a real level of honesty. It's like, okay, well, I need to do this right now, and I'm going to come back to you and let you know. And there's this kind of recognition that the child should know why you made that decision. It may not be relevant right now, but they need to have it. And then they get this sense of, okay, thank you. I've heard what you've got to say. I'm not just being told what to do. Because the last thing you want to do is raise children to be afraid of authority. Because
100%.
That's the last thing you want, is them to be so 100%. Compliant.
One of the other question that, okay. Well, any final words in
business, by the way.
Yeah, it is true. Yeah.
I think we can go on. Yeah, we can go on for quite a while and on this subject as well. So that's probably another panel for another time. But on the area of Men's Week and the connection and everything else, if I can ask from each of you any final words, Alex, any advice or any comments you'd like to make?
You are not alone. I think that is the main thing. That's why I wrote my book, Time to Talk: How Men Think About Love, Belonging, Connection. I'll put it up on the screen. Why not? That's just why I wrote this. The whole idea is that we are not alone in this. The idea of the solitary man who does everything by himself and is a law unto himself, and that is one idea, but it's not the only one. So I just think that when it comes to men's health, I think we are not alone. We must talk about this when we feel safe to, and because it will mean that it's better for everybody else involved as well.
Excellent.
Us, the people who love us, you know, and the people we interact with.
Thank you. And Paul, what final words have you got?
Yeah, I'm going to plug into that as well. Apart from you know, get outside, get fresh air, look at your nutrition, and do all the things that you need to do in the physical realm. to improve your physical health, and that will have an impact on your mental health. Your mental health has an impact on your physical health, however. And as much as we may all be, as much as we all are connected via the unified field of consciousness, we as a physical being, Homo sapiens, are indeed not meant to be solitary beings. We are actually, we benefit by having people around us, right? Get out and reconnect and get out. My one bit of advice, get the hell off the emojis on your phone and send proper sentences and pick up the phone and call them and go and make an appointment and see them physically and rediscover the art of communication. Because I guarantee you, the majority of people watching this are crap at communication. I'm not meaning to be insulting, but you're probably crap at communication. Rediscover the art of real communication. Go and have a coffee, or if you have to have a Perrier with a twist of lime, do that, or a beer, or whatever the hell it is you drink. Go and connect.
Simple. And Steve?
I'm just going to reiterate what I mentioned before. Check in on your mates. Just check in. Check in on at least 3 people. And do this on a regular basis. I mean, ask them how they're doing out of 10. Just check in and get conversations going, and just let that sort of uncover. So that's what I'd leave it with.
Excellent. So for to improve mental health, it's about connection, community, just getting out there and being with people. Well, thanks, Alex, Paul, and Steve. I really appreciate you having been here today. And to everybody else out there, I hope you got a lot out of it. And as you know, you've got the contact details for each of these men. If you've got any questions on that, reach out, ask questions. That's what it's all about. So if you reach out and ask questions, everybody who's here is going to be available in that to answer those questions for you, because we walk what we're talking. Okay, so again, everybody, thank you for being here. And to everybody who's been listening in, we'll see you on the next Campfire. Bye for now.
See you.